Raylan Brandel,
Absent. Excused.
Lori Casey, Dan Dennehy,
Here.
Mary McCormick, Cindy Perdue-Dolan, Cindy Shaw, Chad Silk,
Here.
Matt Steppen,
I haven't heard from Matt, and I don't know if Raylyn did or not, so she might have, so let's excuse Matt.
Ben Thielen.
He's been excused. Can we have the pledge and the prayer, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Almighty God, we implore you to look upon us this night as we make decisions which so greatly affect our Butte-Silver community. Direct our thoughts, words, and deeds so that we may please you and best serve our fellow citizens.
Amen. Thank you, Cindy. Do we have any comment on any item on the agenda tonight? Seeing none, do we have any public comment on anything not on the agenda tonight? And, I'm sorry, Matt.
Even though it's not part of the agenda, I think the public comments section is probably the best section for me to update you guys on these two memorandums.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners. I'll start with the first one that was drafted for Chairwoman Brandel. She asked very specific questions with regards to revamping local government, size of the council, certain things that need to be mandated and changed. I will go through each one briefly and then, kind of the answers to them, and then you can look and see in depth where the rest of those questions went. The first question that Chairwoman Brandel asked was, what would happen, if this commission decided to go to a smaller commission, fewer commissioners? Her question was specifically in relation to Article 3 of our charter. Because charters have priority over statutes in structuring local governments, executive, legislative, administrative organizations, there is legal room to define all of these. However, it will require significant change to Article 3 in our charter, particularly if we go to a manager, a commission/manager style government. Section 3.03E, which specifically authorizes the council to advise the council, or authorizes the community to advise the Council of Commissioners. One of the questions Chairwoman Brandel asked was about advisory bodies located in the community. The charter language already specifically allows for those, so we can keep them in there. What this commission needs to be aware of is there is a key question with that I think needs to be answered is what legal authority, if any, will these bodies have if they are put together? Purely from a legal risk standpoint is if they're given direct powers, those need to be specifically defined. However, if they are just an advisory board, they are just that. They are just advising the commission of things that are going on in their community and where they would like to see things go from there. Section 3.03H, the council shall provide that all functions mandated upon either cities or counties shall be complied with. So this is kind of a broad catch-all that's in our charter. If we reduce the size of our commission, this clause is actually probably going to become a lot more burdensome, particularly with fewer people shouldering, more oversight. It's mandated upon either cities or counties. So this can involve state law mandates, which compliance can be rigid, costly, effective. Are they going to have staffing? Things that this commission might consider with regards to that specific section of the charter, is refining or specifying what functions are meant and who is responsible, either the legislative or executive branch, for ensuring compliance. Alternatively, you could separate policies such as legislative oversight versus administrative execution. There's another section currently in the charter with regards to the annual evaluation and publishing those results in the newspaper. Particularly under Montana law, transparency is always important. Right now, our charter specifically requires that we publish, the annual report, which is what do we call it? It's a special budget report that we publish, and it's supposed to be in a regularly circulated newspaper. Mostly that's archaic. It's very costly. Currently, we're relying on websites, social media, and free local papers. I do think that the charter can be revised to include those to allow for that flexibility. Also to post here in the courthouse and things like that, but then also leave the newspaper part of it in there for generations that don't use social media yet. And then also we can verify whether current practices match, what our charter is specifically requires. If the evaluations are happening, but not as intended or published as widely, those are gaps that can be addressed in readdressing the charter. So restrictions on Council of Commissioners, relation to the city manager. So this is under section 3.04 of the charter. Montana statute and the charter provide that the commission or council should not give orders to city employees directly, but conduct matters through the manager. Currently, this is the same exact thing, but the commission conducts them through the chief executive. I actually think it is specifically important to leave this in here. You have a chief executive or a city manager that is running the city. They do the hiring, the firing, the setting all those things up. I think if we were to allow the charter to specifically allow the commissioners to start diving into those types of practices, what you're going to see is micromanaging from the top down, and nothing is going to get done. But the aspect of having a commission manager system does allow the commission to hire and fire a manager, or let go a lot easier, except a lot more frequently than every 4 years, if under an elected system. So that is the benefit of it. When looking at the question that was presented to me and how our current charter is structured is if the commission decides to go to a commission/manager relationship, commission/city manager style relationship to run the city, that does provide the council with significantly more power with regards to the manager of the city for hiring and firing purposes. So if they're not doing what the commission likes, or what they believe that their constituents want, they can look for a new city manager. The other aspect of this, and I didn't put it in here and I thought of it afterwards, you can put in the charter that the council, if it is smaller and full-time, I think this is also appropriate, does have the ability to hire and fire directors. Again, I think that might be more of a micromanaging type situation, because again, if you have a city manager, they need to hire people that they know are going to work for them. If you've got a council that's deciding who gets hired and fired in all of the top management positions, you might not have a well-meshed system, but it is an option for this council to consider. Presiding officers and tiebreaker votes. So currently right now our chief executive is the tiebreaker vote when it comes to anything that the commission is doing if they are tied. I do think that we still need to keep this in our charter somehow, whether that be, a mayor if we go to a city manager type position, or another presiding officer, someone that could be elected almost, as an outside third party that gets brought in to break up anything that is a tied commission vote. But I definitely think we still need it. I think that there's some room within the charter to revise that specific position if need be, so they're not connected directly with the council. Still having it as a mayor or someone similar or a different presiding officer is an option. She also asked a question with regards to 4.02 powers and duties of the chief executive. Her question related specifically to if we went to a city manager model. And so if the county is to adopt a city manager model, this section has to significantly change to align with state laws. Right now, state law doesn't specifically, completely lay out what a chief executive is to do. It does give them a brief paragraph, hey, they're to run the county and do all these things in conjunction with the commission. Montana statute specifically states through section 7-3, 4362 through 63, the commission/managers, city manager style governments have clearly defined roles. Now, there is a question that Commissioner Silk presented that actually relates directly into this as well. There are certain things that a manager has to do, but that also doesn't mean that you can't add duties to it, if that makes sense. There's a baseline, and there's quite a few in that statute, but then you can add things to it. The ability to eliminate a department. Chairwoman Brandel asked, if we were to put something in the charter to either eliminate, combine, or recognize separate departments, what language should be in there. I do think that language should be put into the charter that allows for this to, happen on a much easier basis. I currently believe we're under an ordinance, but if we put something in the charter excuse me, if we don't have it, in the charter that we can do this through an ordinance, or specifically the procedure for doing it in the charter, our charter may lock us into containing, having certain departments permanently. Because the charter as it stands right now has set up multiple departments and then allows for the county itself to develop other ones. I do think that that could be a question that is cleared up either through the charter or specifically through ordinances. But again, we have to be careful because, as we know with the firefighter situation, there are certain aspects of the law that have to be in the charter and can't be done through ordinance as of right now. And then this question related directly to Parks and Rec and pulling it out of Public Works and having a director status. I think, when looking at the law and looking at what our directors do, I think that title does matter. It's an authority issue. It clearly defines who has the authority within that department for the purposes of budgets, chains of command, pay scale. If left under Public Works, a director title really doesn't mean anything for Parks and Rec because there's specifically a director for Public Works, not Parks and Rec. The fire department, she specifically asked some questions with regards to some redlining that the volunteers brought in with regards to the charter. That is a memo in and of itself that will be provided. And then there was just some things to watch out for. Public input and listening sessions, you guys are doing great on those. Budgetary impacts. So something to think about with fewer commissioners. While it may appear we have a cost savings, it also could possibly put more burden on, each one. In addition to that, you have to think about is each, while it's not going to be in the charter, it's a question, for a budget director, someone prior to, us asking to put it in the charter or set it up that way, that they're going to need staff. They're going to need a place to be. So we need to be mindful of that, I believe. Clarity versus flexibility. Charters need to be specific enough to define responsibilities, but also flexible enough to adapt. I think our charter is okay in that. It does allow for flexibility. It does allow for adaptation. I think it needs to be updated in a few areas that you guys have already started going through, particularly one with, the firefighter ordinances and things like that and the laws. And then we just need to ensure that we're consistent with state law. So anything that you guys are looking at doing, we just need to make sure we're following, section 7-3-463 through 4362 through 4363. Accountability and transparency, annual evaluations, reporting, publicly available results. I think all of that can be put in the charter and clarified in our charter. We don't want to give, with regards to the presiding officer, tiebreaker votes. We want to consider whether, giving a legislative power to a chief executive or manager is appropriate, specifically since they're listening to the legislative branch of the government. That's where that kind of third-party independent tiebreaker vote idea comes in. And then we want to, keep that separation of powers with a clear chain of command. So rather than allowing a commission to, basically tell a city manager or the chief executive who to hire and fire, keep that separate. The only person that they can really deal with is either is the manager, essentially. That way you don't have undue legislative interference with the day-to-day administrative functions, within the city county. So then Commissioner Silk asked me specific questions with regards to our ordinance 2-16-040, and charter authority. So as we all know, that specific ordinance was the ordinance that gives the Director of Fire Services command and control over fire services, but doesn't carry the full authority, under our charter government in light of Montana statutes. Or excuse me, his question is, does it carry the full authority under specific statutes that he'd looked up? So we have to remember that when we're looking at Montana statutes, that one specific statute also needs to be read in conjunction with the chapter that it's from, and then we need to pay attention to whether or not that chapter is also referencing something else. So specifically, Commissioner Silk asked me to look at section 7-3-701, which establishes for the purposes of a charter government establishes the purpose of the charter government statutes and conforms that the self-government charter may establish executive, legislative, and administrative structures that is superior to conflicting statutes. Now, when you read that, it sounds very much like our local government can enact its own laws that directly, contradict state laws. Under this specific section, that's not what it means. What it means is we have the authority to enact our own local government and deal with and put it together in a manner that we see fit, to establish the executive, legislative, and administrative structures of that government. We don't have to follow, to a T what the state statutes are saying. This says local government structure and organizational matters we can control if we want to do that. So it doesn't give us the power to override, a bunch of state substantive statutes, which is actually which is found later on in the specific section, chapter of that statute. And I will get to that. So there's a scope of charter powers under the Constitution. The Montana Constitution, it's Article 9, Section 6, and Montana Code Annotated, Section 7-1, 101, 102, 73, 702, provide that a charter government may exercise any power not prohibited by the Constitution, state law, or the charter itself. These powers are to be liberally construed. That's specific. It comes from a Montana Supreme Court case and several other cases. And what the Supreme Court said is, basically this broad grant allows charter governments to set up their own form of government. Again, remember, it's that setup and structural organization of the government, levy taxes, and provide local services. But those powers are still subject to prohibitions explicitly set by state law. So we have some conflict between, Ordinance 2.16040 and then Montana Code Annotated 7-33210. So 21604 attempts to centralize the command of all fire services. However, 7332110 explicitly stated that all volunteer fire departments and companies or districts, that were existing at the time of consolidation were unaffected. So what we have here is the Montana Constitution and certain statutes saying local government, you can do all of these things. And then we have an ordinance that we enacted, but now there's another outside state law that specifically states, hey, you cannot do anything with regards to these individuals. So when looking at that, there was another law that I found in conjunction with this that also states, where's it? I don't want to roll over here. Here it is. Under Section 1114, it's in Part 4, it's the application of Montana Code Section 1114 and Section 1111. This is in regards, and this is what I'm saying, we have to look at the total chapter. That one places express limits, on the principle by identifying areas where local ordinances cannot contravene state law. So when you go through that section of the law, it specifically lays out you cannot override any felonies that we've put in place, felony laws, any misdemeanor laws with certain penalties, things with certain taxes, zoning laws, things like that. The interesting thing here is it does not specifically exclude the volunteer firefighter section. So what we have is 3 statutes that I don't know have ever actually had this, if this issue has not come up, that are conflicting with each other. We have a specific statute that says local governments can do all of these things except for this explicit list. But then we also have our Constitution that states, local governments cannot enact any ordinances or resolutions that conflict with state law. So realistically, what we're looking at here is we can clean up all of this in the charter, which at that point in time, I do believe everything will be in compliance with state law as it's written now. If the charter does not specifically lay out the Director of Fire Services role as required under 7332110 and how that relates to the governing of paid firefighters versus volunteer firefighters, I think the only logical next step that you have is to request some judicial interpretation and ask a district court judge with authority and possibly the Montana State Supreme Court which one of these laws supersedes the other one. Do local governments have the right to do all of these things because they're specifically laid out in this list, or because we have another statute out here kind of in a totally different section of the law that says also they can't do this? Which one holds more water, if that makes any sense? Mr. Silk also asked a pretty good question with regards to, comparison between law enforcement consolidation. When Butte-Silver County became a consolidated government, we combined the two police forces. There's a statute specific to that, 7-5-212 or 2142, that allows consolidated governments to combine county and municipal offices by ordinance. At that point in time, obviously, the sheriff's office and the Butte City Police Department were, governed under the authority of the county then and the city then, so they were municipal offices. The key difference is that volunteer fire departments, by contrast, are independent entities. They have their own governing boards. They were not ever subject to any local laws. So that law specifically doesn't relate to consolidating them. So then there was just a conclusion at the end that kind of revamps and goes through all of that. And then, as I was stating kind of earlier before this meeting started, I have another memorandum coming with regards to key questions that have been kind of asked in multiple different variances. I never got them in emails, but I wrote them down with regards to, how many questions can we put on the ballot? Are we capable of revamping the charter and fixing, small inconsistencies in it that aren't substantive changes, rather more grammatical, and that will be provided forthcoming, along with a more in-depth memorandum of the difference between putting in the charter a director of fire services and what all of that individual's authority will be in conjunction or in contrast to leaving it the way it currently is. Does anybody have any questions? Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Matt, in regards to the tie-breaking vote, can you have an odd number of commissioners so you don't have to have a tie-breaking vote?
Yes, Commissioner Casey. So I think so. That's actually something that I thought of. It's not in that answer. It was one of the things that I've been rambling around in my brain of how do we do that? But here's your problem. Is you may have an odd number of commissioners, but maybe that night someone is excused and you'll say instead of 7, you have 6. So I think that it still is appropriate to put some thought into having a designated tiebreaker. Now, obviously, when you go to the commission manager style system, you have a mayor. I mean, and a mayor is for all intents and purposes a handshaker, and they're the face of the county. They don't have much authority because that's their whole purpose is not to have that kind of authority. So that's why they are one possibility of having a tiebreaker style vote. They're an elected official. They're not subject to the commission at that time of being hired or fired, so they've really got no stake in the game outside of just making a good decision or trying to make a good logical decision one way or the other, if that makes any sense.
Just a follow-up comment is I've always thought it was odd that the chief executive was the tie-breaking vote, because as a former department head that was part of that tie-breaking point, I work for the chief executive, and if he didn't want me following, probably 90% of the council's agenda is submitted by staff on the executive side. So I always thought it was, because if your chief executive didn't want you working and going that direction to submit, it should have been done at that time and not before the Council of Commissioners with a no vote against you.
Commissioner Casey, that's correct. Is doing it this particular way, or at least removing it from the chief executive's power or the city manager's power, you're looking at a more unbiased opinion, because you are 100% correct in the sense of everything that comes before the commission goes through a department head. Well, not everything, but 90% of it does, at the direction of their boss, which is the chief executive or the city manager. So having that third independent tie-breaking vote, I think, would be beneficial.
Thank you, Mr. Enroth. Any other questions? Cindy, please.
Thank you. I was going to say, almost said madam. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I've been called worse.
Okay, that's habit. Hi, Matt. Thanks for this. This is really very interesting. I need to digest it all. But on Ray Lynn's question, Section 3.04, restrictions on the Council of Commissioners. If you look at the charter, this always bugged me because, well, as commissioners, we felt that we should be able to at least ask questions And the very first part of section 304 in our charter, it starts out, except for the purpose of inquiry or investigation. That always kind of rattled my cage a little bit, because some executives, and JP is one of them, he said, well, you could never, ever do anything with the executive branch. But it says right here, except for the purpose of inquiry or investigation. And so I just wanted your take on that. I know it's a little bit of a rabbit hole away from what you had here for restrictions, but it always brings up a flag to me that the Council of Commissioners should at least have the opportunity to ask questions. That's what I wanted to ask you about.
And that is true. The charter does specifically allow for that right now. The charter, in my opinion, states that they may inquire and they may ask questions. They cannot direct.
That's right.
I still think that that is a very important thing to keep in place, is not allowing the Council of Commissioners to either direct the chief executive or a city manager to hire, fire, or do anything. The Council of Commissioners is the last step in the line. Their authority is if they don't like something, is to vote it down. If a couple of the most recent commissioner meetings, Commissioner Morgan has been very, very good about making that clear. While everybody's kind of getting into the mud on certain things, he just brings it back around to the point of they have the authority. Their authority is either to accept or deny it. And I think everybody's kind of starting to remember that, is that you don't need to get into where it's coming from, why it, who's presenting what, why, or any of the, back thought behind it. It's just simply the commissioners have the authority to say yes or no, and now they're starting to do that. It's working well.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So to start with Ray Lynn's questions, under section, number one, under section 3.03, the community councils, and if we were to adopt that, I would imagine that most community councils in other jurisdictions, other counties, they are advisory, and I would suggest that getting down into legal authorities, budgets, and all those kinds of things, we're hoping that folks around Butte-Silver County are engaged enough to have an advisory council. But as far as giving them legal status, budgets, and all of that, I think that's for another time. I think we need to just get the advisory, if the voters want that, and it's established in the charter as an advisory role. I don't want these community councils, if they were to be enacted, to get too much on their plate to scare off people from engaging, to be too much of a lift. Does that make sense? And do you know if most around different counties are just advisory roles?
Commissioner Dolan. Yes, so this is actually in our charter already, and we already have them. We have fire advisory, we have all of them. So that's, I think, why it got brought up, is right now we have the advisory boards, and I don't mean to put words in Chairwoman Brandle's mouth, so I'm not doing that. What I'm saying is I think the key question is, should they have any legal authority? And that's been brought up because Fire Advisory Council is just that. It is advisory. So you can have a bunch of people sitting around the table and no one agrees on anything and they can't advise the council of anything. Or if they all agree on anything, they've finally come to a place where they have something they want to bring to the council, but they have zero authority to get it past the council if they don't like it. So I think that's why the question was presented, was should a new charter, at this point in time, give advisory councils that are set up by the commission or the local community, should they have any authority? Now, my back end answer to that is I do think they have some authority, in the sense of they can present communications to council, they can open up that floor and ask, hey, we want to do this, and this is why, and this is coming from fire advisory or the water district advisory, or Clark's Park advisory if someone's down there. And they still have that, and then they also have the ultimate authority of voting in the end. But I think that's why the question was presented, was should we give them some form of authority, or maybe just a direction in the sense of, we have these advisory councils in the community. If they wish to present something to council, this is how, they do it. And I think a community advisory board, I would hope that a council of commissioners would accept their input, as a higher level, not necessarily a higher level of authority, but look at it more, because you've got a group of people that have come together that are technically, supported by their community, and asking the council to do something.
Further questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So going on to Chad's questions, and I guess, let's see, which one do I have? Could you explain to us what you foresee when you started talking about page 2 with regard to the conflicting statutes and a judicial resolution? Because of our time frame and the fact that we're working to get things to the voters by November of 26, this sounds very complicated as you have tried to explain it, and the fact that we might have to go to a district judge and possibly the Montana Supreme Court for a ruling on that conflict. What does that time frame look like? Because would that set us back? I mean, and then I get the question of, my initial question is judge shopping to get the, particular answer you'd like. I mean, so there's lots of things that are baked into that conflict. So could you get into that a little bit?
Yeah.
Thanks.
So realistically, I don't think it affects your timeline at all if this body looks at presenting something within the charter. So we have, in my opinion right now, after reviewing all these, there are, basically 2 state statutes and our current ordinance based off of our charter that all are semi-conflicting with each other. So we can start with just the base part of it. The original charter was put in place. The charter specifically developed a director of fire services, but then left out all of the things they were going to do. All of the things they were going to do were later passed in an ordinance. The intent was clear, in my opinion, that the director of fire services was to have all of those authorities. It wasn't legally done in the sense of it didn't compute with section 7-332110, which is the statute that specifically states that volunteer fire departments were not going to be affected based on consolidations of city-county governments unless specifically provided for in the charter. But then you start looking at 7-1-111, which places specific limits on local governments of what they can and cannot do, in the ordinance sections. And there actually is a section in 7-1-111 that states that you cannot, that local counties cannot basically mess with any firefighters. It's either pay or their pensions. I can't remember exactly what it was. So it wasn't as if all firefighting stuff was excluded from that statute or forgotten. I think, that this happens is the law is vast. It really, really is big. And everybody tries their best to not write a statute that conflicts with another statute. But it happens. And when that happens, that's when you need, a judge to come in and say what is or is not, what they believe is or is not the law. When it comes to judge shopping, you really can't judge shop in the state of Montana in a district court sense. You get one bite at the apple, you get a judge. If you don't like that judge, you can pay your $100 and bump them. But the way they've developed the new system, they try and keep it local, but if no one local wants it, then it just goes into a random pool and you get who you get. But I don't think this is just if nothing changes. So you still have the authority right now to go into the charter and specifically lay out what the Director of Fire Services is going to do or how firefighting services are going to work in Silverville County. And then that way it is in compliance with 7332110 because it's in the charter, and it's also in compliance with 7-1-111 because it's not specifically prohibited from being done by the local county government. So I don't think that this messes with any of your timelines. What this is just a brief statement of if, there isn't an agreement on what's to be presented to the voters next fall, 2026, that this is just the next path forward is someone, with a judge, and then most likely the Montana Supreme Court is going to have to provide clarity on the statutes of which ones hold water over the others. So I don't think it will screw up anything with regards to what this commission is doing, no.
So Matt, the conflict is between Butte-Silver ordinance versus the Montana annotated section.
Yes.
If we change the charter language
Yes.
that has a provision of, lays out the specific responsibilities of the Director of Fire Service, is that conflict now taken care of, or is there still a conflict with state law after you specifically provided that recommendation and language in the charter?
That is correct. If it's in the charter, then it gets rid of the conflicts, perceived or not. It's when you break it down to its base elements, the charter specifically needs to lay out what the Director of Fire Services roles are, what will happen with the volunteer fire departments, in conjunction with 733.2110, because that requires it be in the charter. And then 7-1-111 doesn't say that you can't do this. It's one of those things where it expressly put limits on local counties from putting things in ordinances, and then we got a state law that also says, but by the way, you can't do this in an ordinance. So you get this, not confusion, but you get some contradictory, legal on one side or the other, which is where a judge would have to come in and say one way or the other. But if it goes into the charter, it is in compliance with all of those statutes. So once it's removed from our ordinance and in the charter, depending on what the language is, it's presented.
Lori? Sorry. Chad.
Thank you. County Attorney Andrews, would it be specific enough if it was in charter to say that the legislative body of Butte-Silver Bow will run the fire department as it sees fit? Is that specific enough to where it's vague enough, but also the community can decide through its legislative government without going through a study commission to change as it needs to, and the voters in the community can have more time to discuss this, and through ordinance you can form your fire department?
Commissioner Silk, that's very close to what we have now. I think the charter would have to be very specific on what if we have a Director of Fire Services and what their role is and how they will be directing everybody. I think what we have now is exactly what you're saying, is we said we have a Director of Fire Services, and then through ordinance, we will be doing this. Now, the difference between your question and that is the legislative body, the commissioners, will make that determination. I don't know if it changes it, but I will discuss that matter with Deputy County Attorney Sean Peterson and a couple other attorneys that I've been corresponding with regards to firefighter services in the state of Montana.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Laura?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Matt, if we were to recommend laying out the duties of the Director of Fire Services in the charter, you said it cleans up the two, but would it still be in conflict with the one that says consolidation can't affect the volunteers fire departments that were established
No,
prior?
because that's what that one says. It specifically states that volunteer fire departments cannot be affected by the consolidation of local governments unless explicitly provided for in the charter. And that is where I'm saying I do believe, in my opinion, to make it very clear, is the charter not only has to lay out what the Director of Fire Services does, but it also has to lay out what the community will be doing with volunteer and rural fire departments. And then we also need to keep in mind volunteer fire departments and rural fire departments are different. And then we also have some volunteer fire department, not volunteer fire departments, some contract fire departments. I don't think we have any of those right now, but we have to be very specific with the language. Volunteer fire departments, rural fire departments, because we do have volunteer departments, fire departments that are rural. I mean, that's mainly where they're at. But that language is different in the statute, and we want to make sure that we sit down and specifically provide for each one.
So Matt, like Melrose, it does operate different. They're, I guess, rural department. I would still consider them because they are volunteers. They actually get their fees and their own budgets and that. So would we have to be specific in the charter if we wanted them to still be able to operate the way they currently do versus racetrack volunteer fire department?
Yes, and that's what I was getting at, is the charter also has to be specific, in my opinion, with the volunteer fire departments that are being affected. So you can't just say all volunteer fire departments are affected. I think it specifically has to lay out the ones that we have are being affected, and this is what is happening with them. Because yes, Melrose follows the state statute. They have their own board. They do their own budget, where the majority of the ones in Butte-Silver County still have their board, but a lot of their budgetary money comes from the county, and we've got that weird mashup mix-over.
Thank you. Cindy?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Two quick follow-ups. The first is, we're still hoping that Anaconda comes over to talk about how they initially consolidated and they had taken the fire department out of the charter. I would love it if you could educate us, because this is just for education, to figure out, would this even fit, would this even work for Butte-Silver versus Anaconda, and learn more about that autonomy with the fire departments to take it out of the charter, and to get your opinion if that's a good idea or not, based on what Anaconda has done.
Commissioner Dolan, I think a lot of that, I will put that in the memo, but it'll probably be specifically limited to the legal analysis. I think a lot of that question is actually budgetary, in the sense of when you start looking at the fire departments in Anaconda, the size of Anaconda and where they're located. I mean, I can picture them in my brains right now, but I'm not going to say their names because I don't want to be disrespectful and not say the correct ones. But I know for the fire departments out, by Georgetown, they have their own people there. They supply their own budgetary funds and everything, but they are, again, outside of the city. They have their internal fire department inside city limits, and then their other ones are separated. When you start looking at Butte-Silver the majority of volunteer fire departments are located within, while we don't have them, what you would consider city limits. They're very well within inside the city. And so the question then becomes is if you remove them from, if you remove it all from the charter and the volunteer districts stay in place, the legal analysis then becomes very important, and the budgetary analysis. Do they then have to go to the individuals in their community down by Floral Park and collect those taxes and fees? Is Butte-Silver County still collecting them and then giving them to the volunteer fire department? I think the statute's very clear that volunteer fire departments have the ability to levy special mills for their districts. So then you now have, multiple, career firefighter departments located within a city that are completely separate from volunteer fire departments that are located in the city, and who starts covering what. So I think you have to look at the historic nature of what those original volunteer fire departments were meant to do, and then look at that, as a city grows and things get consolidated inside. I can provide the legal analysis on it, but I also think a lot of that's a budgetary analysis, which is Director Hassler, and she would have to answer those questions.
Thank you, Dan. One more question. This actually was a question that Ron Davis posed to us when we were on Party Line last week. And if the voters decide to shrink the size of the commission and go to a city-county manager, what does that time frame, and I don't even know if you can answer this question, but what does the time frame look like once the vote is in November of 26? What does December of 26 look like? What does the change look like for changing that whole system within Butte-Silver?
So I can't provide, Commissioner Dolan, I can't provide specifics on what the timeline looks like, because I think it's going to depend on what needs to be implemented. So realistically speaking, it's probably going to have our current government would have a sunset date on it, and the new ones would be implemented, and you would have to look at if say the commissioners, went from where they're at now to 6, it's not just a matter of a legal time frame. It's a matter of, okay, the county's got to look and make sure their budget's correct. Do they need to raise more mills in order to cover, hypothetically speaking, 6 county commissioners' full-time salaries to the tune of probably somewhere between $65,000 and $85,000 a year? Plus, what do they get in their budget? Do they have staff? Do we have a place to put them? Again, those are all things that I think would have to go through all the steps. So, you'd be realistically looking at least one budget year. And then also the election process, in the sense of we would have to look at how, people would have to run for election, be elected. Half of those positions most likely would only be half of a term, because then you don't have everybody rolling over on the same election cycle. And it would be very, very complicated, and I think take some time. and most likely, you're looking, I would say 1 to 2 years, and also depending on, where we're at in the election cycle. But if, thinking of that now, if it passes in 26, you would have the year 27 to put all those things in place and then get the elections going in 28 on the next cycle. Yeah.
Laura.
Mr.
And also
Chair-
Ron Davis's question, he didn't come up with that question. Someone else gave him that. He's not that smart.
Laura.
Mr. Chairman, do we have a copy of the fire districts, what their district boundaries are, or could we get an electronic copy of what that map looks like as we go through for our deliberation?
I think we did, one of the last things that I think Ms. Khan provided us was with a district map. Maybe it was a commissioner district, I'm sorry. But if we can ask Annie and McKenzie to look at what the fire district maps are, and, oh, Chad has one. I'm sorry. I can't see out of, I'm getting a lot of questions from the, this is going to make you mad, Cindy, from the left-hand side of the dais. So go ahead, Chad, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Dennehy. So that's a great question, and I believe what Ms. Cohn sent us was the response map for the fire districts. It wasn't the fire district map. That is a very contentious issue in itself, even though it's in black and white in resolutions throughout the history of Butte-Silver Bow. There is some theory that some of the volunteer districts have just grown over the years. But if there's no resolution that have been appropriately documented and approved through the Council of Commissioners, the original district itself, after 1977 when we consolidated, would be the size of those rural fire districts. Currently, GIS is working on going through all of the resolutions to document the exact location of those districts, and each district will have the full resolution that goes with it, so every boundary change will be documented within a file. That is not complete yet, and Butte-Silver Bow has never had an accurate, believe it or not, and the fire department has never had an accurate, true accurate fire district map. So with, long story short, there is not a specific one yet, but it will be coming, and I imagine it will be coming before we're finished with our duties.
Given that, I think what we want to do is make sure that the map that we have is the final map of the fire district, not piecemealing it together and making an assumption of where the line is drawn. Has it changed? Was there a resolution that changed it? So I think we will have to ask the GIS, Annie, maybe we can get an update on their progress on the fire district maps and maybe report back to us next week. Or the week after.
And Dan,
Oh,
too.
sure,
Just
Chad.
for public record, too, I know I've asked in fire advisory meetings before, and I'm sure there's some volunteers listening to this right now, but if you please, again, we've asked for a couple years now, if you have any documentation that would speed this process along that confirms the district boundaries, please bring them to either GIS or the Director of Fire Services so they can make sure they get it right the first time. It would just, all the information in one spot and then decide what is factual and what is not would be the best thing for GIS.
Great. Just one more question since we have Matt here. Matt, we are looking at language that will probably drastically change the charter language. For example, we make the recommendation of changing it to 6 full-time commissioners, city manager type of government, all of those things that has to be voted on from the public perspective. So when we're doing that, do we have to have that language prior to the election? Or are we talking about that length of time between November election and 2027 to incorporate the language that the voters have approved? Or do we have to have that language up front? Because I know other study commissions changed the charter, mostly grammatical, and the changes of language were important, but it didn't change the structure of government at any point. This, however, has a major change, and to have that language prior to the election is, I think, problematic, but it's something that maybe we have to do. What is your opinion?
I don't know the exact answer to that, to be honest with you, but my gut feeling is telling me that yes, we need it before. I think people need to know exactly what they're voting on, not we're voting to change it to 6 commissioners and then afterwards we make up all the rules. But that's in the other memo. That's one of the questions that Sean and I, and the thing that the Deputy County Attorney, Sean Peterson, and I do is we independently research and then we sit down so we don't influence each other on what we're finding and where we find it.
Very good.
So that is one of our questions of whether or not we have to present all of that. I've been trying to search for the old stuff that got presented, but because it was back when things weren't electronically stored, it's been difficult.
Okay, thank you. Mary?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, it certainly seems to me that there's been a lot of, maybe not, we're unique in being a consolidated city-county government, but there's certainly been a lot of municipal governments, city governments that have done this. Bozeman, and I think they've done things as well as, go to the city manager and reduce the number of their commissioners. And I assume when you talk that you and Sean are doing research, that you're looking at what other communities have done and what level of detail that they had to provide in their ballot measure. I mean, I don't think we can be expected to have a fully complete plan with all the costs addressed. I mean, that would be wonderful, but I mean, we're going to have some basic things there, and it's certainly communities around Montana that have gone to city managers. I'm sure there's, Bozeman only has 3 commissioners now. I think they used to have more, and what that means, but there's, counties and places in Colorado, I mean, all over the country, so it seems like we should be able to, with good research, figure this out.
Yes, that is correct. Yes, and Bozeman went to 3 counties, 6 city. And again, we're just a little bit different because we're totally consolidated. And but yes, Bozeman is one of the places that we've been looking at with regards to that. I would think it would be easier to find a lot of Bozeman stuff online, but really it's not. But that's one of the places we have been looking and researching, is how Bozeman went to their city manager system, Belgrade, how they went to the city manager system, and what was presented to their constituents. And we have been going from there. We just want to make sure we have sufficient enough detail in what's presented to the voters that people understand and know what they're voting on. But yes, you're 100% correct that we can't, it is not the purpose of this commission to come up with the budgetary amounts and the things like that. That's the afterwards. That's the implementation of after what the commission decides to do.
And also, Matt, I think the language on the ballot is fairly simple.
Yes.
And I know you looked at it, it's all affirmation for the existing government structure, which would be the chief executive, council and commissioner,
Yep.
or for city manager government. Those are easy sort of language. No,
Yes.
I shouldn't say easy. They're less, they're much, easier to have the language was. But the problem with that language is you have to change the charter to go with it.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm thinking that from next Monday's meeting, the public hearing, until we have a preliminary report finalized to send it out to the public again, we're going to have to do some due diligence and a lot of work to change the language of that charter that reflects what the voters have approved. So that is going to be a big job, and I'm glad Matt and Sean are on our team to help us do that.
And that's just it, is once this committee decides on what they want to present, we will start working, on that. You have your public hearing next week to allow individuals to come in and present to you, what they are thinking and what they want. I think that's going to be a big help. And then, after that, my office will actually be at full capacity the following week, and I get to do my
Very good.
job full-time. It's fantastic. So we will be concentrating fully on study commission and things like that, going forth here after basically October 6th.
Thank you very much, Matt. Just kidding.
Sorry. I was thinking of something that might help Matt and his office is the language something that MSU Center can help us with? Because we did pay for that membership.
I have a lot of MSU stuff, yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, because we did pay for the membership when we started this commission
In
for
fact,
some of their help.
When you
The
actu-
gold membership,
Yeah.
Lori.
And in fact, when you start researching this stuff, I would say 85% of it has a Montana State University tag on it. Like, you'll get through it and you're reading a statute and you're reading something, and then it's also Montana State University, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, yep, it just keeps going back and back and back to that.
Thank you. The other Cindy.
Yes, I need some help. No.
Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm thinking ahead here. So when I did this 20 years ago, we had very specific one-liner almost. Bob can attest to that. They, like you said, they were housekeeping things. We did establish animal controls to be on a standalone, very simple. But we have some huge things that if we really want voters to understand what they're voting on, it's going to be a trick. But Raylene and I were talking about this the other day, and our report could easily state this is our reasoning why, or this is what we have heard from the public, of course. And maybe we can spell out some of the pros and cons, or however you want to put it, so that people can make some kind of an educated understanding, I'll say, of why that we're proposing that it be on the ballot. So I'm thinking budgetary issues, possibly, what pros and cons of manager versus chief, numbers of people, and how mainly it comes down to money. I think a lot of these are going to be an issue of budget concerns. But I think it's really important, if we put something out there, it can't be too gray or too general, because it's pretty complicated.
Yes.
And I think in our report, is that correct, Dan, that we could spell those sorts of things out? Yeah. And of course, we'll have a final report as well. But
Sure. And I think MSU School of Government has provided those sort of provisions in comparison the existing form of government versus the proposed government that the commission is going to recommend to the voters. And it does spell that out. And if you recall last week when we were in Ramsey, we made it fairly clear that whatever the decision is going to be, it's the voters' decision, but there will be a price tag to that, which is, we're not here for price tags.
Nope.
It's the voters that say if it's important enough for them to change our form of government, if it's important enough for us to reduce the amount of legislative branch officials, there is going to be a price tag to that. And if they say, yeah, we get it, and we still vote for it, that's the people have spoken, so.
And that's primarily just simply what I was getting at with a lot of these, is you guys are going to get hit with those questions. That's the only reason I keep bringing it up, and that's why it's in a couple of these memos, is people are going to ask, well, what happens when we go to 6? Does that lower the cost? Does that raise it? To be honest, you really can't answer any of those questions in the sense of giving them a specific. The simple answer is yes, it will affect it. We just don't know how.
Cindy, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll make a comment and then I have a question. I think that because of these budgetary questions that we have no authority over, I think that brings in to the question that we were just talking about before we started the meeting, is forensic audit. And auditing forensically the Butte-Silver budget and seeing if folks would like to do that, could showcase, it's just basically looking under the hood and what are we spending our money on in Butte-Silver County. And having that kind of audit, which is different than just making sure all the numbers are in the right place and the numbers add up. That's a regular audit. But a forensic audit is saying, where do we spend our money? And if that's the case, we can find maybe some budget savings to make it budget neutral. But again, those are questions that are for the council of commissioners, really not for us. But it gives us a tool to look at where we're spending our money and if there are some savings where we can move and shift budgets or whatever. But beyond that, I wanted to ask you, Matt, with the, County Attorney Enruth.
I like how it's informal in here.
I'm looking forward to your next memo about the ballot questions and how many, but I also want to ask you, with the other bucket we talk about recommendations to the Council of Commissioners, is there a process where we could have bucket A of recommendations, just ideas that the commission could or could not effectively put into place, but could there be another group of recommendations that are binding, that may not need a vote of the people, but we are suggesting that the public wants done? I just don't know. Is there any differentiation there, or it just has to be recommendations and dependent on whether or not the Council of Commissioners agrees or not? If that makes any kind of sense.
Commissioner Dolan, it does. I understand your question. I will look, to be honest with you, I don't think that there's any way you can make a binding recommendation. Otherwise, it's not necessarily a recommendation anymore. It's an order. But I think what you're asking me really is there a way to have bucket A and bucket B? Bucket A is, hey, we have these recommendations. Look at them. It's okay. Bucket B is, these are the recommendations that the people brought to us, and we really want you to look at them. Like, you need to take an in-depth look at them. Now, that process, if I'm, just speaking off the top of my head, is semi already in place. It's entering a communication to the council and then saying, we're requesting either Judiciary or Budget and Finance or one of the committees take a hard look at this. But we can put it in the memo to determine whether or not that is possible, or if the process is already in place. And if it is possible, how we do it. And if not, then we just go through the standard
Thank you,
way
Matt.
through communications.
Cindy, I think it's called supplemental reports is the name of the, I think, function of supplemental reports is that it provides a recommendation to the Council of Commissioners for their adoption or denying or vote on that we have heard. For example, and we'll probably be debating that and making our final decision on what goes into the ballot issue, the recommendations that the voters will vote on, versus, okay, do you think we are making this our voting priority too much? There's too many votes for some issues, versus moving that to a supplemental report that goes to the Council of Commissioners and the Chief Executive saying the Council of Commissioners recommends that, for example, the coroner is not a standalone department anymore, that it should be moved into the sheriff's office, for example. And that could be another ballot issue. Depends on what we decide in this issue. But there could be a number of supplemental reports that is part of the process that the Study Commission has the authority to make to the council, to the governing body, I think it's called, and they can say, yeah, we're going to look at this, or they could say they punt it down the road. That's up to them.
One follow-up to that. I wonder, and maybe this question is for not only Matt, but for Cindy and for Dan, who have been on study commissions before. Have you found it limiting the number of ballot issues you can put to the voter, and trying to make that determination of what goes to a vote versus what should just be a recommendation? I'm just wondering, the more information we get from the public, the more concerns they have, and the more I think at home going, I think everything should be a ballot issue, but it can't be.
Matt?
So I think there's actually a simple answer to that very complicated question. Things that go on the ballot are things that have to be in the charter. So firefighter stuff, the coroner, if I'm not mistaken, also has to be in the charter. Whereas if it is something that can be done through ordinance or resolution, that's already within the power of the commission, whether they are 6 or 12. So I think then you think of that as a recommendation. So if we're looking backyard chickens, that's an ordinance. It doesn't need to go in the charter. If for some reason this council wants to dive in on how cool backyard chickens are, that's awesome. And I think you can make a recommendation to the Council of Commissioners that, hey, this was brought to us, but it's within the Council of Commissioners' purview. We think, here's the recommendation for you to please take a look at this. I think that's the simple answer to that complicated question.
Please, Cindy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And you're spot on, Matt. I mean, we were tasked as a study commission to look at form of government and any charter changes that we believe that need to be made. Those are the legal aspects of what we're doing, and we're really beyond that. But luckily, we do have this opportunity to make a list of very highly recommended recommendations from the public, because that's what we represent as the public. And there doesn't need to be a vote on that, but I would hope that if commissioners see a supplemental report of recommendations, that they take it at least seriously. But I can guarantee you cannot compel the Council of Commissioners to do anything. Just saying. They have to take, if the voters change, the voters can do that. They can compel the council in a way. But if the voters decide to go with ballot issues, and that's the only thing that we're here to do, is to make the recommendations to the voters. But yeah, you were a commissioner. You can't, we're kind of golden in a lot of ways, but anyway, thank you.
Yeah, I'd just follow up and say, in past administrations with the county attorney, they didn't take those recommendations to the Council of Commissioners, and all that work was for naught, which I don't want to happen, and I'm adamant about that. And thank you to County Attorney and Ruth for saying that you're going to take those recommendations seriously, bring them to the council, and have them deliberate on those, because it's what the voters have asked us to do. So thanks.
And again, I don't know the answer to the question, but if those recommendations come forth and then my office has to put them in a communication to the council, that's what we'll do. Authorize, requesting the Council of Commissioners authorization, to take a look at X, Y, and Z, and here's why. And whether you got to make sure the communication is specific. It's actually asking the council to do something that they can vote on. But I think that that's appropriate. That's important, asking the Council of Commissioners to vote on looking at this. And then it goes to judiciary, and you go through debate, and you look at it and possibly draft a resolution or an ordinance or something that goes along with it.
Thank you, Matt.
Speaking of that,
Cindy?
does anybody have any questions for me? I got football.
You have to, you have a holding or clipping penalty to call, so yeah, we understand. Thanks, Matt. That was
Thank you, everyone.
very, very helpful. Yeah, thank you so much, Matt. Cindy, did you have a question? I'm sorry.
No questions.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, very good. Any other questions? Matt has to run out of here. Okay, Matt, again, thank you very much. Okay, that was the public comment on anything not on the agenda. That was Matt's very good language that he provided us. Any other comments? Mr. Banderob. You betcha. I'm sorry?
I didn't notice that it was 5 o'clock, not 5:30. But that's my fault, not yours. Items on the agenda. R. Edward Vanderhoff, 2601 Grand Avenue, Butte, Montana. For and on behalf of the Greeley Neighborhood Community Development Corporation, Inc. Reference public comment on any items on the agenda. Item number 9, You've got a lot of work to do. New business, planning for the preliminary report. And I do hope your preliminary report is a proposal. In that, the public, the subject is Greater Butte-Silver Bow Community Councils, District Community Councils, and Neighborhood Community Improvement Councils. A 3-tier recommendation. In that the public has the right to participate in the local government's decision-making process discussions. The laws can be found at Montana Code Anointed. The recommendation in the code is that I hold these type of comments until you reach the actual item in the agenda, but in that it's on your agenda this way, we will proceed. The decision-making process entails, as you know, identifying the issue or problem, gathering relevant information through listening sessions, preparing a proposed solution for presentation, holding a public hearing before the final decision, making the final decision, and then implementing the agreed upon solutions. In the 9 years that I attended Butte-Silver Bowl Council Commissioner meetings on a regular basis, I do not remember the Council of Commissioners ever calling for or holding a public listening session. They held public hearings after the fact. Under the managerial form of government, the local government, executive branch, and departments are meant to provide services and implement projects, not propose and determine policy and instigate projects. There is no systematic channel established in our local government structure for the people to formulate, have approved, find funding, and have implemented consensual neighborhood improvement projects. Getting old, sorry. Therefore, we submit the following suggested amendments to the Butte-Silver Bow City County Charter. There shall be added and deleted to the clause 3.03E to authorize community councils to advise the Council of Commissioners to read, there shall be authorized a Greater Butte-Silver Bow Community Council to advise the Council of Commissioners. The Greater Butte-Silver Bow Community Council to consist of one delegate from each commissioner's district. There shall be an annual district neighborhood community improvement councils assembly of the participants in the various neighborhood community improvement councils within a commissioner district to select a district delegate to the Greater Butte-Silver Bow Community Council, no S. The Greater Butte-Silver Bow Community Council shall be responsible for the nomination and recommendation of termination of the Butte-Silver Bow City County Manager, not the appointment, not the contracting, and the initiative and instigating, or whatever, of recall positions for elected officials in providing recommendations. The Greater Butte-Silver Bowl Community Council shall be responsible for the nomination and recommendation of termination of the city manager, initiating I got a double here, sorry about that. There shall be various neighborhood community improvement councils within each commissioner district. The formation and function of the neighborhood community improvement councils shall be in accordance with the original proposed Butte-Silver Bowl Council Bill Ordinance 14-8. The neighborhood community improvement councils shall be responsible to instigate and facilitate the formation, approval, funding, and implementation of neighborhood improvement projects through their district's commissioner. Neighborhood improvement projects to include but not be limited to public finance, infrastructure, safety, enrichment, enhancement, development, economic and land use, health and sanitation, and/or other services. This project criteria comes from Great Falls and from the Greeley Area Plan. Respectfully submitted for your consideration and action.
Thank you, Mr. Vanderhoff. Because we will put this in our record and deliberate accordingly. Do you have anything else?
I'm
Okay.
waiting for the next one.
Oh, okay. Go ahead. Sure. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Cindy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for being here, as always, Mr. Vanderhoff. Ed, I'm just still having a problem trying to digest this and not and trying to think of it as not 3 more layers of bureaucracy. And I know you disagreed with me last time we spoke, but having a Greater Butte-Silver Bow Community Council, a district community council, and a neighborhood council, when we're living in 2025 and people don't volunteer for anything, and trying to get folks engaged in the process is a great thing. And personally, I think a neighborhood community council is a good thing, a good idea. But these 3 layers and the layers in page 2 that you've just outlined, I just don't know how it could be even feasible, let alone get the people to be engaged enough to have those layers.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah, I can reply.
Yeah, Mr. Chair? Thank you. Actually, a comment period, there's no dialogue, and I hate to set a precedent, and nothing against Ed having an opportunity to do that, but there is no dialogue during a comment period. It's just strictly a comment.
Right, but we changed that last time because Ed's here all the time and Chairman
Well,
Brandel.
I mean, I think that sets a precedent. I really,
Yeah, and
I'm
she
not
said
very,
that- well,
I'm
she
not
said
very
that
comfortable
last
with
time.
it. I'm not comfortable with that, just on the record. Thank you.
Okay, everybody have their comment. Ed, you have another issue?
Under Montana law, Cindy is absolutely correct.
Okay.
Comments are not to be discussed. But this comment on the items on the agenda should be made during the discussion period. And Butte-Silver Bow has been in violation of Montana law ever since I've been going there. Unfortunately, we have not taken it to court to get it resolved. But they're both right. I have the right to discuss at discussion period. Now, in that you changed it last time and allowed me to speak during this time, I'll let you make the decision
Okay,
on
the
that.
question was public comment on anything on the agenda or not on an agenda within our jurisdiction.
This
And I
is-
understand the comment that you have. I understand the debate and the comment back to you. I think you have comments, you have put them in writing, and we will provide the necessary deliberation on your comments. You have a second comment tonight? Do you have a second comment
I
tonight?
have a second to comment to make on items not on the agenda.
Okay, very good. So, one of the things that we're doing next week is having public comment period. And that's when we sit and listen to our public, not making any comments back, but to listen to the feedback coming toward us, not having a debate. I mean, I guess if we have a comment, and I don't think it's a debate issue, I think it's just a comment back saying, your submission tonight is duly noted, and there is some people who might agree with your deliberation, and some people who are bringing up questions and concerns about your comments. That's totally correct. And if anyone does not have any more comments on Mr. Bondarov's first comment, we can move on to your second comment on items not on the agenda tonight, but in our preview.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to make sure that we're all straight on what precedent we're going with. The no comment or no discussion is perfectly fine, and Cindy's absolutely correct, but Chairman Brandel changed that a couple weeks ago when allowing, because Ed was here all the time, to allow a back and forth. I don't know if you were there for this, so if we're going back to no questions for Ed, that's perfectly fine. I just want to make sure on the record we're good with that.
Cindy.
Thank you, Cindy. I appreciate that. My concern is setting a precedent. If every time someone comes up to make a comment and believes that they have that opportunity for a dialogue, I think that's opening up a can of worms. And I not that I have anything against talking to Ed. I've done it for 15 years now, and we've had a lot of discussions. But this point in our agenda, it's very formal, is there is no dialogue. And I appreciate that not that I wasn't here for that one, to be honest, or else otherwise I wasn't surprised when we did that. But it does set a precedent, and comments can turn into huge conversations, and I don't think that that's a very good, precedent. Thanks.
I have no problem with that.
Okay, very good.
R. Edward Vanderhoff, 2601 Grand Avenue, Butte, Montana. Public comment on any item not on the agenda, but has relevance. Subject is clarification of my comments on September 8th relative to the responsibilities of the Council of Commissioners. I want to clarify the vision that we, the Greeley Neighborhood Community Development Corporation, Inc., and the cluster of concerned citizens have for the neighborhood community improvement councils. Even though I said what we need is more bureaucracy and another level of government, that is not the intent of the neighborhood community improvement councils. Our nation was founded by harmonious communities, independent individuals working together to seek common solutions to common concerns for the common good. Not the entitlement mentality that government should do something, but I am not willing to do anything but complain that I saw you encounter at your open houses. As in the city and counties of Montana, the neighborhood community improvement councils are to be independent neighborhood improvement organizations officially recognized by the government, but as determined in the deliberation of the Rules Committee on the proposed Council Bill Ordinance 14-8, they are not to exclude any other organization or individual from going direct to the government. The neighborhood community improvement councils are not to be a homeowner association. They are not to have any code creation or enforcement authority, nor any governance authority, other than submitting consensual recommendations to the Greater Butte-Silver Boat Council to be forwarded on. The role of the commissioner is to be an instigator, serve as the ex officio non-voting, non-government link to the government and function as the chair of the district annual District Neighborhood Community Improvement Council Assembly. And the only function of that assembly is to select a delegate for the Greater Butte-Silver Bow Community Council, which is the council that would be recognized as the one to pass on recommendations to the Council of Commissioners on a regular basis. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ed. Do you have that written comment you can give to Annie, or?
Pardon, I didn't hear.
Do you have the written information you just spoke of to give to Annie for part of the record, or do you have
I will
it?
send her the email
Okay.
if she'll give me her email address.
Sure will.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Can I just make a comment? Thank you, Ed, for all of your information. But maybe we could put Ed on our agenda for the next regular, meeting, and that would be an opportunity to have a dialogue and to have a discussion about a lot of the things you've presented to us.
Don't worry, I'll be back.
Okay, but I'm just saying that would be the proper venue, I think, for that.
Very good.
Okay.
And we won't do that next time because it's the public hearing, but the meeting after that. Okay? So Annie, if you could maybe note for your record that we might invite Mr. Vanderhoef back for official comment. Cindy, or Lori, sorry.
Mr. Chair, I'd recommend that maybe the agenda says discussion of neighborhood councils and community councils,
Very good.
so that anyone else who might want to come could also.
Very good. Have any that specifically says neighborhood councils, so people who want to talk about that in our next can come, but not just Mr. Vanderhoef, but anybody who's interested in that. Okay? Thank you, Annie. Thank you, Laura. Good suggestion. Any other comments? Okay. Wow, we're going to approve the minutes of the meeting held September. Anything else? Of September 8th, 2025. Yes.
I might as well just jump back in, because I won't be here for a while after
I
the
gotcha.
next meeting. Anyway, I would just like to say that I approve the minutes that were presented by Annie, and I would ask for a vote to approve them.
It's been moved. Is there a second to approve the minutes?
Second.
Been seconded by Lori. Any question on the minutes? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. Okay, Annie or Mac, do we have any correspondence or study commission update from general public? Anything that came in?
No.
Thank you. Perfect, Annie. Perfect. Okay, very good. Some unfinished business is public outreach discussion. Do we have any comments regarding the open houses both at Tech and at Ramsey?
What the heck? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
When are you leaving?
I was there. Probably not too soon enough.
Just kidding you. Come on,
No,
Sid.
next week will be my last meeting for 6 weeks easily. Anyway, yeah, I thought it was a great meeting, and it was different than the other open houses that we had, because before we would introduce ourselves and then folks just sort of went about their business. But this one, we were just inundated with questions, and from the get-go, you could tell people really wanted to have a dialogue, a discussion with us about a lot of things, and maybe
Right.
not even things that but we want to listen to everything, of course. And yeah, it was a lively group, and I thought it was probably one of the more successful ones. So
I
yeah.
do too. I agree, Cindy, and I think Mr. Vanderhoef issued that comment just recently, or just on his comments tonight, is that we heard a lot of things about complaints.
That's right.
But one of the things that came out of those meetings is the neighborhood councils, about how do we get more involved. It might be an avenue, it might not be, but there's several questions regarding that. And also, we didn't have the opportunity yet to provide the information of the survey. I think that's really, as it stands now, I think that's going to be really important for the end of our discussions. But I agree, the last two, at least the one at Ramsey, I'm sorry I didn't meet the one, I didn't attend the one at Tech, was very good. Okay, party line to be held the last Wednesday, so we have a party line scheduled for September 24th. This Wednesday, who's doing that? Mary's doing it? Anybody? And Ben? No, well, Ben was there last time. Oh, okay. Yes, Mary.
It was originally scheduled for Matt and I think Ben is going to join us.
Okay. Thank you. Any update on the up-ed? Matt is also not here tonight, so I don't have any updates. Does anybody else have any updates? Cindy?
I was just going to say also, not to interrupt, but Ray Lynn and I went to the Kiwanis
Oh, very good,
luncheon
yes.
last week, and it was really well attended. And boy, Shanna's just doing a great job.
Yes, she is.
She's there taking notes and making, getting her thoughts together on how to do these things. And yeah, it was a great group. So that was
Very
fun.
good. Some of the new business is discussion of the calendar and projects planned. Oh, I'm sorry, Cindy.
I just wanted to put on the record, our party line last week, it was excellent. We really hyped the survey to get people to do the survey, talked about fire, the coroner sheriff, audit, even the auditor assessor positions, and of course the number of commissioners, chief executive, city county manager, mayor. I mean, all these different things. And I think it went really, really well. It was nice having Ron there to ask the questions because he's, been around so long. He's been to all these different study commissions. So it was really, really good. So thank you, KBOW.
Very good. Any other comments on that agenda item? Seeing none, going to new business. We wanted to have a discussion on calendar and projects planned for the preliminary report. And so I was kind of kicking it around with Raylyn about what sort of, how we break the work product. One, of course, we're going to have to decide what are the ballot issues that we're going to provide for the voters. So that's kind of one topic of discussion, and we will spend a number of weeks in discussion regarding that. The other one is probably supplemental reporting. What, as you say, Cindy, moves from one bucket, as you asked Matt tonight, to another recommendation to the council and governing body. That is another issue. Another issue probably is going to be the fire districts and the proposed language, not specifically with that, but specifically with what changes to the charter language we have to look at. So that is going to be a very daunting task on what we recommend to the voters and how we're going to change the language of the charter to reflect our changes that the voters. So we'll have our work product of the current charter, our proposals and preliminary reports, and our final report. All of that will come into play, and then what the charter will look like before we provide it to the final report to the public. So we have a number of issues. I would like, after next week's public hearing, to maybe schedule a time. Maybe the next meeting is to take a calendar out and provide the information on our work product and our work sessions for that.
Mr. Chair, I'd also put in that discussion of the calendar, additional presentations.
Absolutely,
Perfect.
yes.
Thanks.
And that would be with Anaconda Deer Lodge, and you brought up the coroner issue, sheriff and coroner issue, and have some other people come in and comment and regarding their experience with those. Thank you. So we'll plan on getting after it after the public hearing, okay? Public hearing, that's next Monday, 5/29. I would suggest that, as we have done in a number of our open sessions or listening sessions, that we would have Shanna Shanna, sorry, Shanna, I'm glad you're not here. Shanna here to put up strategically those poster boards and those big boards. We can have a staff report prior to the public hearing just saying these are some of the issues that we're going to talk about. And after that staff report, open it up for public comment and listen very clearly about what people have on their minds and what they don't, and what they agree on and what they disagree on, and have that public hearing and close that public hearing. We will have several public hearings, I would imagine, but this is the first one, and I think the way to do that is to continue to put those information up that Shanna had in very good form and to proceed from there. Do I have any comments on that? Am I off base there, or is that something we can do? Okay, very good, thank you. Are there any other scheduling matters? Okay. Remember the public hearing, September 29th. It's going to be, I hope, well attended, and I know that we have the word out. 5:30, yeah, 5:30 to 7:30 next Monday. Yes, Mary.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't know if I'm out of order in this, but, you know, I guess I've missed a couple of the open houses, and I was wondering if within the next week we could possibly get something from Shanna that is starting to consolidate what we're hearing from people, from the surveys about the issues that they're concerned about.
Mm-hmm.
I'm also really concerned about if there'll become a time when, you know, I know that it's a lot of paper, if she's going to scan those surveys so that we can get copies and read them ourselves.
Yes, go ahead, Lori.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just going to suggest, because I know Annie's new to us, but a lot of this paper information that we get each week, maybe we can start putting that out on the share folder of the OneDrive. Like Shanna did provide some initial where the survey is going, like 49% were in favor of this and that. And no, because it's been handed out as hard copy. So I think if we could start maybe to scan that and maybe put it in OneDrive where we can, if you're not there or that, you can go back and find it.
Yeah, very good suggestion. And Mary, Shanna did have the kind of preliminary results of the survey, exactly what Lori was saying. It has percentages of what people are thinking. Huge percentages on some things, pretty close percentages on other issues. So that is out there. I don't know if she sent it to you. Oh.
I haven't seen it.
Okay.
But, you know,
I gotcha. You know, that Percocet does a lot of good stuff. And yeah, right. No, seriously, I think it's out there, but if you didn't get it, let us know and we'll send it to you. Yeah. Do you have a copy? Thanks, Annie. You're awesome. Cindy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One of the things that we talked about last week on Party Line was to have surveys, maybe hard copy, paper surveys that folks can drop by the radio station. I'm thinking maybe even the chamber to, if folks can't do it online, they just want to write out their survey and have them available at certain places around Butte to make it easy, because we really want to up that sample size. I mean, right now we don't have that many people that have responded considering the size of Butte-Silver County. So any way that we can make it easier for folks to fill that out and remind them it's very quick and easy, painless, hopefully they'll do it. Thanks.
Thank you, Cindy. Cindy.
Thank you, and also, thank you, Mr. Chair. Also, the sticky notes that were in all the boards.
Right.
I mean, they're just little capsules of information, but I would love to see them myself, too. I mean, and I don't know if Shanna can do some kind of a...
Shannon took them last week.
She did,
Yeah,
yep.
so she is going to compile all of those comments that were on the poster boards.
Good.
Yeah.
That's another source of information. Thanks.
Yeah, you bet. Anything else? Hearing none, I would ask for the adjournment of the meeting.
Move to adjourn?
It's been moved and seconded that we adjourn. And I can't wait for next Monday for the public hearing. Great. Everybody, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you very much for coming tonight. Look forward to seeing you all next week. 5:30 to 7:30. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Awesome.